Hello and welcome to Random Topics with Jack, the podcast where we explore the intriguing and sometimes controversial topics that shape our understanding of the world. Last time we took a fascinating trip through the timeline of the periodic table. We explored its origins, the brilliant minds behind its creation, the human dramas and rivalries that shaped its development, and how this iconic chart became a cornerstone of modern science and education. It was quite the elemental journey, and I hope you have found it as enlightening as I did. And speaking of journeys, I guess you could say our last episode was a real deep dive into the structure of the universe. Today, however, we are shifting gears entirely. We are leaving the predictable world of elements and venturing into the very building blocks of imagination and adventure. We're diving into the captivating world of Dungeons and Dragons. We'll be exploring its history, its evolution through different editions, and its massive cultural impact. Get ready to roll some dice and embark on an epic retrospective. Let's get started. Alright everyone, buckle up because we're about to rewind the clock and explore the very origins of Dungeons and Dragons. Before D&D became the global phenomenon it is today, its roots were firmly planted in the world of wargaming. Think strategic battles, minifigures, and complex rule sets. The two key figures who bridged this gap were Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. Gygax, a prolific designer with a love for fantasy, and Arneson, who brought his innovative ideas from his own campaign, Blackmoor. Arneson's key contribution was shifting the focus from commanding armies to controlling a single character's journey through a fantastical world. It was a revolutionary idea, and that idea culminated in the original Dungeons and Dragons release in 1974. This wasn't just a game, it was a whole new way to tell stories. They introduced groundbreaking concepts that are still core to D&D today. Character classes like fighters and magic users, the crucial mechanic of hit points to track a character's health, and of course the iconic dice rolls, those polyhedral dice that determine the fate of every action. It was a niche game at first, a hidden gem for those who craved adventure. But like any groundbreaking creation, D&D faced its share of challenges. In the late 70s and early 80s, it became a target of the infamous Satanic Panic. Misunderstood and sensationalised, the game was wrongly accused for promoting occultism. This controversy, though largely unfounded, created a stigma for a time, and it showed how powerful imagination could be, for better or worse. It was a period where players had to defend their hobby, and it's just the beginning of our D&D journey. Next, we'll explore how the game has evolved through its various editions. So we've seen how D&D started, a niche game born from wargaming. But like any great adventure, it didn't stay in one place. Dungeons and Dragons has continually evolved, adapting and changing over the decades. Let's chart that course through its various editions. So in the 80s, it was truly the golden age for D&D. And that is largely thanks to Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, or AD&D. This wasn't just a minor tweak, it was a significant overhaul. AD&D introduced more complex rules, deeper lore, and a more structured approach to character creation and world building. Think of it as upgrading from a simple map to a richly detailed atlas. This era saw D&D explode in popularity. It became a cultural touchstone, influencing countless fantasy novels, games, and imaginations. It was the game that really cemented D&D's place in the mainstream, despite the controversies we touched on earlier. And then came the year 2000, and with it, a seismic shift. 3rd edition, Dungeons and Dragons. The biggest game changer here was the introduction of the D20 system. This was brilliant because it unified many of the game's mechanics under a single familiar dice roll, the D20. Whether you were attacking, saving against a spell, or attempting a skill check, you were likely rolling a D20. This unification made the game much more accessible and streamlined. It led to an explosion of creativity with a massive number of supplements and campaign settings being released. It felt like the game had a new, robust engine. And just a few years later, in 2003, we saw 3.5 edition. This was essentially a refinement of 3rd edition, cleaning up some rules and making adjustments based on player feedback. It was a solid iteration that many players loved. And speaking of refinement, this era also saw the emergence of Pathfinder, created by Paizo Publishing. Pathfinder started as an evolution of the 3.5 rule set. It became a major competitor, offering a similar but often more complex and customizable experience, catering to players who loved diving deep into character builds and intricate mechanics. And now we get to 4th edition, released in 2008, and it was a bit of a departure. Wizards of the Coast made some significant changes, really leaning into a more tactical, combat-focused experience. Think of it like a video game RPG with distinct powers and cooldowns. And this shift was rather controversial. While some players loved the streamlined combat and the clear roles for each character class, many longtime fans felt it strayed too far from the core spirit of D&D. It definitely divided the player base, with some embracing it and others looking elsewhere. And then came 5th edition in 2014, and it was nothing short of a renaissance. This edition was a masterclass in listening to the community. It brought back many of the beloved elements from earlier editions, particularly the feel of 3rd edition, but with a much more streamlined and accessible approach. 5th edition made D&D incredibly welcoming to new players. Its rules are intuitive, its core mechanics easy to grasp, and it strikes a fantastic balance between narrative freedom and structured gameplay. This edition is responsible for the massive surge in D&D's popularity we see today. And that brings us to the present, and looking towards the future. You might have heard the buzz or even tried One D&D, and while Wizards of the Coast hasn't officially called it a 6th edition, the community often refers to it as 5.5e because it's positioned as a significant revision, but more of an update to the 5th edition rule set than a complete overhaul. So the plan is to release updated versions of the Player's Handbook, which we've seen, Dungeon Master's Guide, which we've seen, and the Monster Manual, which we've also seen. The goal is to further streamline gameplay, enhance player experience, and ensure D&D remains relevant and engaging for years to come. And we've seen these core books rolling out since 2024, marking a new chapter in the D&D legacy. But what's really interesting is how Wizards of the Coast is handling this. They've been actively seeking community feedback through playtest documents. This collaborative approach aims to ensure that the evolution of D&D truly reflects what players want and need. So from its humble beginnings to its current renaissance and future iterations, Dungeons & Dragons has continually adapted, proving its enduring appeal. But what are your favourite edition memories? So, Dungeons & Dragons isn't just a game played around a table anymore. It's woven into the fabric of modern culture. You see its influence everywhere. Think about how shows like Stranger Things practically made D&D a household name again, introducing it to a whole new generation. It's in books, movies, and countless other forms of media, often serving as shorthand for geek culture or a gateway into imaginative storytelling. And speaking of gateways, video games have been absolutely huge in bringing D&D to a broader audience. They take the core mechanics and rich lore of D&D and translate them into interactive digital experiences. So a prime example of this is games like Baldur's Gate and its sequels. They didn't just adapt D&D's Forgotten Realms settings, they brought the deep character development, complex storytelling, and strategic combat of tabletop D&D to life on PC. They were critically acclaimed and set a benchmark for what computer role-playing games could be, introducing millions to the depth of D&D's world. And then you have MMOs like Neverwinter. These games allow players to dive into the D&D universe in real time, forming guilds, tackling dungeons together, and experiencing that sense of collaborative adventure that is so central to D&D. They keep the spirit alive and accessible for both seasoned players and newcomers. And it's not just about playing the games themselves. These digital platforms have fostered massive communities. Players connect online, share strategies, form friendships, mirroring the social aspect of traditional tabletop play. You see this amplified on platforms like Twitch and YouTube, where people stream their gameplay, making D&D content incredibly popular and visible. And this leads us perfectly to the rise of actual play shows like Critical Role and Dimension 20. Now, these aren't just people playing D&D. They're compelling narratives with incredible production value. They've drawn inspiration from the cinematic feel of video games and blending it with the improvisational magic of tabletop, attracting incredibly diverse audiences and showcasing D&D as a powerful storytelling medium. And finally, the influence of video games extends to tools that we use for tabletop D&D. Think about virtual tabletops like Roll20 or Foundry VTT, and online character builders like Beyond D&D. These digital innovations, partly inspired by the convenience and accessibility of video games, have made it easier than ever for people to find games, manage their characters, and play D&D regardless of geographical distance. It's truly made the game more accessible than ever before, and it's actually how my D&D group play most of our games. Actually, all of our games. But it is incredible how D&D has permeated so many aspects of our lives, isn't it? What aspect of its cultural impact resonates most with you? But from its humble beginnings as its niche wargame offshoot, Dungeons & Dragons has undergone a remarkable transformation. It's evolved through numerous editions, weathered controversies, and ultimately surged into the mainstream, becoming a beloved hobby for millions worldwide. It's a testament to the power of imagination, collaboration, and shared storytelling. But looking ahead, D&D shows no signs of slowing down, with the upcoming release of more updated core rulebooks through One D&D, a continued focus on digital integration, and the growing influence of actual play streams. The game is poised to reach even greater heights. We might see more streamlined rules, deeper digital tools, and perhaps even more unexpected collaborations. The future looks bright, and I, for one, am excited to see where the dice fall next. But now I want to hear from you. What are your most cherished D&D memories? Do you have a legendary character, a hilarious mishap, or a particularly epic campaign you want to share? Or maybe you're the player who, like me, always seems to struggle with doors. Let me know. You can leave your stories in the comments below or reach out on social media at Random Topics Jack on most platforms. I love hearing your stories. And this episode was a special selection by one of our amazing Patreon community members. And if you want to get early access to episodes and help pick topics, consider supporting us for just £1 a month. But rest assured, this show will always remain free for everyone. But our next episode is diving into the fascinating world of the respiration cycle, also picked by a community member. But yeah, as always, I've been your host Jack. But until next time, keep questioning and exploring.